Hi, I'm Daniel Kalban, the creator and writer of Sherlock Holmes, The Phantom Masquerade. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and you are watching and listening to Two Geeks Talking.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We are joined today by a returning guest. It has been far too long since this guest has been here. Feels like at least 2 or 3 years. Very talented writer. He has created a new series called Sherlock Holmes, The Phantom Masquerade. We're joined by the ever-talented Daniel Kalban, of course, the writer of the series. How are you doing today?
I'm good.
Welcome back. It's been far too long.
I think last interview was maybe Knightwrath. That's been a while.
For those that don't know anything about yourself as a creative person, tell us who you are and what you're bringing to Two Geeks Talking today.
I'm Daniel Kalban. I am the creator and writer of such books as American Dreams, Knightwrath, Ruka Knight, and now Sherlock Holmes, The Phantom Masquerade.
Because these two figures are in the public domain now, I'm surprised I haven't seen more works by talented writers like yourself with these two genres. I'm glad that you're bringing these two together.
Yeah, it's interesting because the Phantom's been public domain for probably almost a century, if not longer. The book was written in 1910 as a serialized thing in a French newspaper, then eventually novel put together as a novel. But Sherlock Holmes didn't really go into full public domain until what, 1 or 2 years ago?
Yeah, something like that.
And so there have been Sherlock Holmes Phantom of the Opera pastiches before, mainly as novels. There's some comics out there, but it's mainly, let's take Sherlock Holmes, drop him into the events of the original Phantom of the Opera novel book. It usually cuts out a couple of characters, like the character of the Persian, who is the main detective figure other than Rao, who's standing in the original novel, but he's often cut in general from most adaptations, unfortunately, like in the musical. His functions may be replaced by Madame Giry. And even in the very almost faithful 1925 silent film version, which originally was the character was supposed to be the Persian, but in the reshoots and the rewrites, he was turned into the character of Leroux, member of the Sûreté.
Such a long history with both genres. It has captured the minds of the masses. I mean, of course, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and of course, the author of The Phantom as well.
That's not Leroux.
Thank you.
He wrote all these mystery books. Like he wrote one of the most, like a very popular, like locked room mystery. That what we remember is like this small hope novel,
Oh, yeah.
which fell into public domain pretty quickly. It wasn't a huge success, and then all of a sudden, it just becomes this pop culture phenomenon, starting with 1925's Lon Chaney film.
What was the spark that ignited the idea for this unique crossover between Sherlock Holmes and the Phantom of the Opera?
So I originally was writing a different Holmes idea, basically going after a kind of a Ripper copycat. And then I put it to the side. I didn't think it was like there were a couple of things I wanted to do, tolerance and whatnot, and still heavy-handed. That was just the first chapter. I'm like, no, that doesn't work. And I'm thinking to myself again later. I'm like, you know what? I like to do something a little more horror related. But like I wanted to do a Phantom of the Opera adaptation before, but that already has been done quite well at A Wave Blue World did a very good adaptation of it, so they beat me to the punch. Well, the ideas of making the Sherlock Holmes and the Phantom would be interesting to me because they're two of my favorite characters in pop culture. But I said to myself, I can't just make it a pastiche. They can't just make it, Holmes in Phantom of the Opera. That's been done countless times. Nicholas Meyer wrote a really great novel, which I started reading after I wrote my first script, where it's basically Holmes during his time away from London because of some of the death, ends up, being a violinist in the Paris Opera House and has to investigate the Phantom on behalf of Irene Adler, who's, wanting to protect Christine. But there's been other pastiches like that done before. So I don't want to start retreading old ground. So I started to think, what can I do that'll make things more interesting? And then this plot involving Christine and Ralph's son started coming into being. I'm like, that's the way to do it. It's a sequel. It's a sequel to the original novel. It has to be the novel and not like the musical or any other real film adaptation, except for maybe the 1925 version, because that's the only film that's in public domain.
It's definitely interesting because everyone gravitates towards the films, but there was I believe, a version in the 80s that was done as well too. That was fairly well received, and then of course the musical just expanded upon that, and it was really well done overall. These are two iconic characters. Why are they so important to you, and why did you want to blend them together in your story?
I think I always had a fascination with them. Like Sherlock Holmes, you can't escape it being if you're in the English speaking world, and then also Wishbone, PBS Wishbone. Like I always had a fascination with Sherlock Holmes as a kid. So when my mom was pregnant with me, the publishing company she worked for was the American publisher for the companion novel book to the musical. So like stuff about the musical, the script, the behind the scenes. So they published that in the United States. So she, when she was very pregnant with me, went to see the Broadway company, the original Broadway company. So I probably heard that company in utero. There's always been this kind of idea of Phantom and Sherlock Holmes always in the background of childhood. Just being a New Yorker, you can't help but escape from like the last 35 years until last year. Phantom. You can't escape it. So it's just like two characters that always just fascinating to me, and really fun characters just to mesh together because they're of the same time period. They're of the same Korean melodrama kind of aspect. And it's also good for writing some nice gothic horror.
I mean, you got to love the architecture, the setting. I mean, there's such beauty in the darkness that is these two worlds that I'm glad that you're able to at least bring it to this comic.
But I'd like to point out there's another fictional character in this first issue. It's from a popular work of English fiction. I'm not saying who because that's supposed to surprise. But he's an important character for the sake of our plot.
Darn you. That means I have to pick up the book, obviously. And that was already a given, so it works well for me. This is an amazing team that you have here. I want to talk about them as well. We were going to originally have Jay Schiek on, who's an extremely talented artist. He's worked on a number of comic books, including his own works with Hush Ronan. Talk about your team that you have around you here, because I think that's truly important, especially with this vibrant world that you've put together.
I've been wanting to work with Jeremiah for a while, and we did have a Western we started, and we kind of fell off in separate ways, and it was going back to just writing the script. And like, I need someone with this like who can do a nice gothic, shadowy world. Kind of feeling Jeremiah could do it. Originally, it was supposed to be a black and white book, and I thought Jay does great shadow work, and it was going to be very good and atmospheric. And just a really fun book to do. And then I was talking to a person about this, and because originally I pitched it to somewhere else and it was rejected. And they said, you know what, you might have a better chance if you had it in color. And we went back and forth. And I was like, someone suggested doing these very simple colors, like more like a monochromatic feel. And I said, you know what, I'm going to talk to my colorist of American Dreams, Warnia K, Sahadewa, if she can pitch in the colors, because she was also doing the colors on that Western book I was doing with Jay before we put it to the side. There's a kind of like a quasi-reunion of everything. And then Justin Birch, who's our letterer, I've been wanting to work with for a while. And I guess we finally found the opportunity to finally work together. Well, he's not seen the pages, but we talked a little bit about it at Baltimore this past weekend.
What was the piece of artwork you got back from Jay? And then you saw the colors afterwards from your amazing colorist. That was just way better than your script.
Ooh. Well, without going spoilers, a certain figure comes back into Holmes' life during what may or may not be a drug-induced state. And I thought it was going to be like a simple, like hallucination. And Jay, later Warnio for colors, really brought up the horror aspect. Like, oh, this works. This has worked better than I thought it would be. Because I also give it being a different angle in that panel. And then Jay is just so it's a straight on look, like Holmes' point of view. If Holmes on his hand goes like this, and it just works great.
I got to see the Kickstarter campaign. Obviously, that's currently ongoing. Let's talk about that. Kickstarters are always a very long-term format when it comes to promotion, when it comes to getting eyes on it. Talk about some of your tiers. Talk about the covers that you have, because you have some beautiful covers. I only have a couple of them down there, but there's just so much beauty in the campaign that you've created here.
We have some great covers. We have our main cover by Jane Warnia. We also have a cover by Ben Morse, both for a regular cover and we're also doing it as a foil. We then have cover by Vasco Gioccini, which is Holmes playing the violin. Well, we have the Phantom doing kind of like a thing with a cape. And then we have another cover by my buddy Kyler Clodfelter, which Ben Morse also colored. And then Vasco did our fifth cover, and I've done this many covers before on a Kickstarter, which is a tribute to a Holmes film I really enjoyed called Murder by Decree. And we did a tribute to that by adapting the poster from that film to our cover. And we try to make everything as affordable as possible, even with rising costs. Like we have a $6 digital if you want just to have like a little entry thing to have portable, on your computer, your tablet. So we start at $12 for our variant, for our variant cover, and like $15 for our variant. We're trying to keep it as much affordable as it can. We know costs to produce the stuff. We know everyone's wallets are a little stretched at the moment. We're trying to make things, fair for everyone.
That was one thing I noticed about the movie posters. They were really well done, really beautiful. Like there was just so much to look at and see, and it just really kind of takes you back to a time of posters, because I think that's a lost art.
I definitely agree, because I look at posters these days, it's like they're just so generic. Whereas poster art used to have like a real skill to it. Like Bruce Struzan was a master of poster art, and then he was forced to retire because everyone just started photoshopping everything.
I agree. And I think they're very reasonable, especially for, I'm sure, the printing costs when it comes to putting all of this stuff together. I'm glad to see that you're keeping it for the masses to consume. And I think it's necessary and needed, especially in this day and age. And the story seems to be too good to pass up. So that's always a great thing to see. What's the most unexpected challenge you faced while creating this particular comic series?
Well, there's two things, and they all connect down to Andrew Lloyd Webber. So Andrew Lloyd Webber, back, let's say, nearly 10, 15 years ago, decided to make a sequel musical to his Phantom called Love Never Dies, which also has the character of Ron Christine's son in the mix. So I go, okay, anything I do with that kind of character, I have to be completely different from Andrew Lloyd Webber's characters, which is a good thing because that musical is not good. It's not a great sequel to Phantom. It's not. Lindsay Ellis has a really great takedown of it on YouTube goes into why it's not a good musical. It's also spoilers for a musical that's like 20 years old now. It is not really Raul and Christine's kid in the musical. It's really the Phantoms and Christine's kid, which makes it even but it's cuckolding and it's like no, it's like it's just a bonkers story choice. And I'm someone who is very much like Christine and Raul are supposed to be together. The Phantom is not a good supposed to be a villain for a reason. I wanted to name the character Gustav, and I couldn't because that's what they already did for Love Never Dies. We named him Philippe after Rawls' brother, who is in the novel, is often cut out of most of the adaptations. Another hard thing to do is design the mask because, and I had to tell this to every artist I worked with on this, being Jeremiah, Kyler, Ben, or Vasco, is like, you cannot do musical mask. We will get sued horribly by Andrew Lloyd Webber. You know, the poster design has like a mask like this. The trademark is for a mask like this. And the problem is, if you look up Phantom masks for reference, it's often this. And so every time like a thing is like, no, you have to adjust it. Like, so like Kyler's thing kind of take on that, but he did it in a way so it's different. So it's, stands out by itself as its own thing. But you always have to be careful not to do the kind of the vertical half mask because then Andrew Lloyd Webber's lawyers will, come down from London and, kick my butt.
Let's avoid that, yes.
Yeah.
What's a common misconception about writing comics that you'd like to dispel?
Ooh, I was like, oh, it's so easy to do. No, because you have to think ahead of your head. Okay, how's this going to work on a page without overcrowding everything? How's your dialogue going to work without overcrowding the art? And also, how much liberty you can give your artist versus how much you're going to micromanage? Because there's people who do like very brief descriptions. I try to do like two sentences, try to be as detailed as I can, it was still as brief as I can. Some people will be even briefer. And even like if I would do like something like Marvel Method, I will be as detailed as I can with Marvel Method. So, I'm giving everything. To be honest, where some people will just write like they fight for like page, they fight. They fight. Like I like doing the fight choreography too when I do an action book. But then on the other side of that, you have like Alan Moore scripts for Watchmen, and I read that and I'm like, it's like paint drying. It's a great book when you read it, but like if you read the script, like it's so detailed, like down to like hand movements, its placement of silverware. If I was Dave Gibbons, I would throttle him. So you have to find that happy balance of both detail and creative freedom for your artist, while at the same time, trying to figure out how to stage things in your head so everything fits in your head. So when you go to letter, it's not like everything's being covered up with your words.
That's the good thing about scripts these days is you have so much mass media to consume. If you look at film, if you look at television, you can see the flow of what makes film and TV fit for comics. You can model it after that to make panel to panel flow a lot better. I'm sure you've done that with this particular series, and I really can't wait to see the action you kind of throw into it. That's really what I'm hyped up about. Because you have already established worlds with Sherlock Holmes and the Phantom, how did you make your own world setting for this particular comic series to make it feel like your own?
Well, it's pretty easy to start with because they're both that same era of Victorian England and late 19th and golden era France. No, it's the Belle Epoque France. So we're talking, both late 19th century England and France. Easy start point. It's the same era. But also I just think to myself, to make it different, I'm just gonna make this more of a sequel to the original novel. So it helps I can move the setting just to one location, in this case, London. But then I have to figure out how does each of these characters come into play now that they are in London. And it's, 10 years on. So for Christine, she's still singing, she's now a noblewoman by marriage. For Ralph, he's gone from this rash sailor to a somewhat more calm diplomat to the court of St. James from France. So there's a reason they have reasons that they're there. So that makes it easier to start. As for the Phantom, well, I don't want to give spoilers because we reveal that later on in issue 2, how he got there and everything. We have to make sure, this is a sequel to the novel. Versions that you see like in the musical, we can't use. So we can't have like Madame Giry show up as like anything but like a box attendant like she is in the novel. And therefore she's not in this story because she wouldn't fit. At the same time, it's like, okay, fits here, this fits there, this doesn't fit. But then we also have to figure out the whole, how does the Phantom come back? In the original novel, he's dead. And also the whole idea of that he might still be around in this first chapter, is giving Christine a lot of fear. And everyone goes, "Oh, it's such a romance." No, it's an obsessive person living in a basement, obsessing over a opera singer. But who, depending on your take, could be a 16, 17, 18-year-old girl at this point. So it's a creepy thing for Christine. She's going for PTSD, just thinking, he's alive. How is he alive? I buried him. Like literally, you read the book, is she buried him. She's there when he dies, and she's the one who buries him. It's great character work. It's also a little Phantom goes a long way. Like if you read the original book, he's not there physically a lot of the time. And if he is, it's like and he's gone. And then if you watch the musical, again, he's there probably more than in the book, but he still a little goes a long way. I try to follow that kind of idea of don't be too heavy-handed with the Phantom, because otherwise things will just, be too much. You have to find that right balance. And you have to remember it's a mystery. It's Sherlock's domain.
I think that's interesting. I think it comes back to trying to find a balance between these iconic characters and their supporting characters as well. You're dealing with so many iconic characters in one series that how do you give each character the balance needed to really portray that to the reader that may not really know too much about either genres if, say, they don't really follow it.
And that's why this first issue, helps set things up and helps, fill in some of those things for people too much. I don't want to be like too heavy handed, like this is what happened. You're going in somewhat as pop culture as well as you know what's going in. So this has a little bit of Sherlock, a little bit of Phantom, but this one is much more of a Leroux, Christine, and their family dynamic with their son. Because their son is kind of been sheltered and he doesn't like that. He's kind of like, I want to go and play in like Regent's Park. I want to, be out here. I don't want to just be stuck inside of a governess all the time playing my music. I think they would just say, okay, go with your governess. And then she turns around. He's gone. So, but he does get to have some fun with another Holmes favorite, Wiggins, the Baker Street Irregulars. Don't worry, there's some likeness to this first issue. And then, of course, once the kidnapping happens, everything goes crazy.
You've always been a solid writer. I love looking at your social media. You're really promoting it. You're really engaging with a lot of people. And you're looking towards the future of what you want to write as well, too. And we can touch on that a little later. But I really think that you've established yourself as a solid writer for these past, many years I've known you, at least. So I can't wait to see what you're going to do in the future with that. Because you're such a writer of many different genres here, what is a habit or routine that has been crucial to your productivity as such a writer?
Well, it helps that I write a lot of notes, even when I don't have time to sit down and write. I just open up a Google Doc, even at my day job, and I'll got to like this idea here, this idea here. And because I have a busy day job and sometimes a busy weekend, things are happening. I'll like, okay, I can write X amount of pages today, and slowly over time, keep putting down my notes. I can get that script done into my editor, and then get that once that's done to my artist. So sometimes it really is slow and steady wins the race because a lot of us can't write full time at the moment. So I can write what I can, which helps.
It's about biding your time, though. It's about figuring out what you can do with the limited time you have in your day. I mean, it's not like we can stay awake 24/7.
And I'm the person who knows I need X amount of sleep a day just so I can function as a human being. People find me like, why do you go to sleep at like such early hours? I'm like, because like I know if I don't get like 8 hours of sleep, I will be like functioning at work. Because it doesn't help I don't drink coffee either. So it's like I need the sleep so I have enough energy to get going. I just don't like the taste. Which is funny because I like tiramisu, but I don't like the taste of actual coffee.
The business side of comics is difficult to say the least because it is a multimedia avenue. It's not just about putting a book together. It's not just about writing a book and then hoping the masses find it. It's really a networking opportunity. What have you done, especially with the crowdfunding and the marketing side of things, or who have you had help you with this particular series? Because I think that's interesting to note.
So I'm teaming up with Joey Galvez and also Mr. W. Moore from Geek Collective to help promote this. They're also helping me with some logistical stuff and whatnot. It helps having some people help, push and promote it. But other than that, it's just me posting about it constantly, talking about it constantly, talking to my fellow creators about it, and you have to keep pushing it. Like, even though it's going to exhaust them, it's going to exhaust you, you have to keep pushing it. Right now, the social media algorithms are just so horrible. So you have to, cut through the noise and just keep pushing it until you're like, fine, we'll get it. There's enough of it.
As long as there's not a restraining order, you're fine, right?
Yeah. And it also helps I was at Baltimore Comic Con last week, and I was at Terrificon last month, and I had little flyers made up to promote the Kickstarter both in pre-launch and shortly after launch. So hopefully that helped also get awareness from people who normally wouldn't see my social media.
So, what has been the reaction then when you were handing out these flyers or when you were talking with people that were interested in this particular comic series? Like, what were some of their questions for you?
Like, well, they didn't have much questions, but as soon as they heard Sherlock Holmes versus Phantom of the Opera, they're like, so I have to double check the what we've gotten from the QR codes yet, but definitely when they hear the word Sherlock Holmes going up against the Phantom of the Opera and they see the art, they're like, okay, I'm interested.
It's amazing to see what you put together. How many issues are you thinking for this particular series? And is there going to be maybe a collected edition whenever you're completed?
So I was thinking of 6, but someone talked me down to making it 5. So actually, I was having insomnia at Baltimore Comic Con, and I'm like, okay, if I want to make this work, because I want to like pitch a penny, because if you want to get it to like a publisher, they want like 4 or 5 issue series. I said, okay, this gets cut here, this gets here, this gets moved here. This character may survive for another day.
Mm.
Much as I wanted to, off for the thing of the story, it might not work for this, but it could work for a sequel. And I do want to do a collected version down the line.
Thinking hardcover? Are you thinking like soft?
I like to do both because like I did that with American Dreams, so I did the self-published version of the trade. I did a softcover and a hardcover with different price points. So it'll be interesting to try both. Like I'd like to see if I could do like a cloth-bound hardcover, but that might be too expensive. Because I really love like the library editions they did of Hellboy, the nice cloth-bound hardcover. That might be a little too much, but I have to give that kind of like old school feel. If you like the old copies of like Sherlock Holmes and the Phantom, they're cloth-bound copies, right? And I like to point out this is the Crimson Case book of Sherlock Holmes because ideas for sequels already. Some monsters I do want to bring out, like Frankenstein's monster, Jekyll and Hyde, Wolfman, well, werewolf because Wolfman's copyright, so on and so forth. Like there's a couple of classic monsters I can't do because those are technically not public domain. Like Creature from Black Lagoon is not public domain character; it's a solely universal creation, so I can't do that unfortunately.
Loch Ness monster in human form?
Do something like kind of like more like a Shadow over Innsmouth Fishman thing, maybe. I mean, there is a Sherlock Holmes versus Cthulhu Mythos game out there, so who knows? Apparently, it's a really interesting video game out there. I've heard of it. I've never played it, but I've heard it's a good, really creepy game. And you are being Sherlock Holmes going up against, Lovecraftian entities.
There's a year one version of Sherlock Holmes, and then there's the original one.
Yeah, I think it's by the same publisher.
Yeah, yeah. So it was really well done. Because I played it all because I was obsessed with it, and the voice acting was amazing. The graphics were beautiful. Like it felt like you were looking at Jeremy Brett in a video game. Like it was that level of okay, this is cool. I like this.
It's really funny that we know Jeremy Brett and Sherlock Holmes, but we also famous for one other major film that I'm aware of. My Fair Lady. He's Freddie Einsford Hill in My Fair Lady. He's the male ingenue. Ironically, he doesn't sing his own part. He's dubbed. Unfortunately, like Audrey Hepburn was dubbed by Marty Nixon. So it's funny that I believe he also was Watson for a play of Sherlock Holmes in the United States, I think called Crucifer of Blood, opposite Charlton Heston
Uh-huh.
as Holmes, and he was Watson. And a couple years later, he gets cast by the Granada TV studios to be their Holmes.
I can't see Charlton Heston as Holmes.
Me neither, but like they cast him, I think, in the Los Angeles production. And I think when I came to Broadway, good before my time, they cast someone else in the part. Apparently, a young Glenn Close was in the cast too.
Oh wow. Researched here. What was a fact that you didn't know about Sherlock Holmes or the Phantom of the Opera that you were like, wow, this is something I didn't expect?
It's more of like how the timing works because the Phantom of the Opera, the novel, isn't quite the sequel time. So I had to look up, okay, like what year did it come out? Was taking place? So it lines up within like 10 years difference. Means that Holmes may have been somewhat aware of this case beforehand. Kind of interesting. Also looking at the groundwork you can see for World War One at the time, because a lot of the diplomatic, alliances at the time were being made, result in World War One. And this is a plot point that does start to build as we get further into the series, including a couple of crass remarks by Holmes about such alliances Mycroft will not approve of. And yes, Mycroft will appear eventually. Because he has to, because he's such a so he's not going to be like the Mark Gatiss character. I'm trying to make him more like the original version, though there might be some, fan theories out there that might be reflected in Mycroft's portrayal. It's really funny because I think Charles Graham, I think most people know better as either the commander of the AT-ATs of Hoth in Empire Strikes Back, or the Nazi-aligned businessman in Last Crusade. It's best known for playing Mycroft not only in the Granada series, but in the 10% Solution, the film adaptation of, again, a Nicholas Meyer Holmes Pastiche novel. Also in that film was Nicole Williamson as Sherlock, who we might probably know best as Merlin from Excalibur. Alan Alda, I think it's Sigmund Freud. Robert Duvall's Watson. Laurence Olivier as Moriarty, and Vanessa Redgrave as the damsel in distress. Both the novel and the screenplay were written by Nicholas Meyer, who, of course, we all know best as a Star Trek writer and director, I think in fan circles. And Nicholas Myers has written like 5 Holmes novels. The 7% Solution, The Canary Trainer, which is a Phantom of the Opera pastiche, West End Horror, The Adventure of the Peculiar Protocols, which as a Jewish guy is an interesting one to me. I need to read that. And most recently, The Return of the Pharaoh. They're written as alternative adventures that are the real adventures that have been hidden away by Watson's stuff. So, by Watson's Spatchbox has hidden away. I just love the fact that Laurence Olivier to play Moriarty. It's a very small part in the movie and in the book. And I'm not going to spoil it because it's an interesting twist on probably probably the most infamous of Holmes stories. And the fact that a major character is Sigmund Freud, it's a great and fun book. It's a great and fun movie too. Also, one of my favorite things about it, it has a Stephen Sondheim song in it that he wrote for the movie, and it's just basically one giant double entendre. It's called "The Madame Song" or "I Never Do Anything Twice." What's your idea what kind of song it is?
Daniel, we could definitely keep on going here, but is there anything that I haven't touched on you'd like to showcase those that are watching and listening to this interview before we wrap up this interview?
Well, as always, please support the book. Please support, what I have coming down the pike. I have more American Dreams and Knightwrath and American Knight coming down the line. And just always read and support good indie comics.
And where can we find, of course, this campaign and yourself online and on social media?
You can find my campaign on Kickstarter currently. We are active through October 17th. You can find me on Facebook at Daniel Kalban, on Instagram at dkalban, on Twitter, we're not going to call it X, at Daniel Kalban, and pretty much dkalban everywhere else. I also have a Substack, kalban.substack.com, where I post maybe like once a month about things going on. I do it more, to be quite honest, but
sometimes once a month is enough. That's what I do.
Yeah.
Well, Daniel, like I said, that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You can, of course, find Daniel's past interview and all of these other interviews, at least 1,200 plus others, on our website, tgtmedia.com or twogeekstalking.com. That's TWO, not the number 2. That's not a website you want to go to. Our website's going through a revamp because I'm only one person. So go to youtube.com/TGTmedia. That's always updated. The podcast is at twogeekstalking.podbean.com or just search Two Geeks Talking wherever you get your podcasts. And as I say every week, everyone has a story to tell. It's up to me to help bring that out. Thanks for listening and watching on Two Geeks Talking.
Bye, y'all.